In addition, the ICRC may be called to deliver forensic services, typically in situations of armed conflict and in its capacity as a neutral humanitarian actor, such as in the case of Libya during the armed conflict there, when the ICRC was asked to help recover and identify scores of victims of recent killings. It is only thanks to the tremendous group of highly experienced and dedicated forensic professionals that I am honored to work with at the ICRC's forensic unit that we have managed to meet rapidly growing demands for humanitarian forensic services. 27 years on from the early investigations in Argentina, the global expansion and implementation of forensic investigations into gross and systematic violations of human rights and of international humanitarian law are attracting an increasing number of forensic practitioners, and it offers unique opportunities, including for global research and cross-fertilization. As mentioned earlier, the Academy and other leading international forensic academic institutions are playing a growing important role in empowering these developments and should be supported accordingly. We are also witnessing in many countries around the world the successful development of true local forensic capacity for carrying out humanitarian investigations in a sustainable manner. Increasingly so thanks to international as well as bilateral cooperation to that effect, a good example of which is the United States Department of Justice, ECTAP. For example, Colombia, a country which ECTAP began assisting in 1991, has acquired model forensic capacity and is now helping other countries acquire that status. It is no coincidence that nearly a third of our own forensic staff at the ICRC comes from that country. The expansion of international cooperation in this field of forensic sciences is empowering scientific research accordingly, and the corresponding science edge of humanitarian forensic sciences to meet the challenges arising from novel contexts of application. I strongly recommend participants to the numerous papers which will be presented in these days to that effect in this meeting. The developments outlined have impacted positively on forensic sciences well beyond their application to humanitarian action, and have therefore confirmed the pertinence and need for continuing global efforts from the wider forensic community for stepping up global communication, coordination, cooperation, and standardization. These four goals should, in my view, shape our strategies and planning for the midterm futures towards a truly global and integrated forensic community. I therefore wish to congratulate once again the Academy for choosing this year's theme, which I am aware reflects a core value of the organization since its foundation in 1948, and when applied to the humanitarian cause has undoubtedly contributed to making the world a better place, thanks to many of its members' generous services, as pointed out by the President in his January 2012 message in the Academy News. It is no coincidence that most of those mentioned as protagonists in the development of humanitarian forensic action are also members of the Academy. Tens of thousands of victims of war and catastrophes the world over have been able to mourn their dead, overcome grief, and recover human dignity thanks to the contribution from forensic sciences to humanitarian action. It was therefore natural for the ICRC, upon receiving the prestigious Human Rights Award from the International Association of Forensic Sciences during its 19th triennial meeting in Madeira last year, to dedicate it, as it did, to all those colleagues and institutions who have made it possible for forensic sciences to be regarded today as an important tool for humanitarian action. Last but by no means least, I wish to dedicate this talk to Clyde Collins Snow, to whom I ultimately owe the great pleasure and the honor of being here with you today. I was delighted to learn that the University of Oklahoma's Center for Social Justice has recently created the Clyde Snow Justice Award to, quote unquote, recognize those who have made a significant contribution to the rehumanization of victims the world over, and that it decided to offer its first award to Dr. Snow himself, in the words of the center, quote unquote, for the work he has carried out on anonymous graves in over 40 countries, and helping train local forensic anthropology teams, emphasizing the importance of following proper forensic procedures while still cherishing the recovered remains as an important fragment of a person's story. In other words, dear colleagues, for his remarkable contribution to global research, the forensic edge and humanitarian forensic action put together. Many thanks.
It's my honor to introduce Dr. Duarte Vieira. He is the Chief Forensic Pathologist and full Professor of Forensic Medicine, Forensic Sciences, and Ethics and Medical Law at the University of Coimbra in Portugal. He's also the Director of the Portuguese National Institute of Forensic Medicine. Dr. Vieira has always been active in the field at an international level, and he's currently the president of the International Academy of Legal Medicine and the European Council of Legal Medicine. Today he is going to address us on the topic human rights and torture. He has served as a forensic expert and advisor on these issues with the UN Commission on Human Rights, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the International Rehabilitation Center for Torture Victims. He has dedicated much of his time and career to this issue, and we're very honored to have him here today.
Good morning. Allow me to begin by saluting all participants in this plenary session, to salute my fellow speakers, to salute the chairmen, to thank the Academy and President Ubelaker for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be here and to have this opportunity to address the Academy. I apologize for my very bad English. In my time, we learned more French and Spanish than English, but I hope to be able to make myself understand. I will talk about something that I've been doing for the last years about the role of forensic sciences in the investigation of torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degraded treatments of punishments. I've been working as forensic consultant for the United Nations High Commission of Human Rights, and I've been participating in the missions of the Special Rapporteur on Torture a little all over the world. As you know, in 1948, 64 years ago, was approved the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Article 5 of this Universal Declaration states that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degraded treatment or punishment. So the protection and promotion of human rights became one of the main goals of the United Nations. And the United Nations promote and protect human rights through a group of 9 core treaties that stipulates the legal obligation of states to prevent, to prohibit, to criminalize, and to investigate torture, to bring all perpetrators of torture to justice, and to provide reparation to victims of torture. But of course, there is always a striking contrast between law and reality. And the truth is that there is a widespread practice of torture and appalling prison conditions in many countries of the world. Inside the United Nations, the highest political body dealing with human rights is the Human Rights Council. And inside the Human Rights Council works the Special Rapporteur on Torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degraded treatment or punishment. And one of the main tasks of the Special Rapporteur on Torture is to conduct fact-finding missions in countries all over the world. In first world countries, in third world countries, a little all over the world, he goes and he tries to investigate the conditions of detention and try to see if there is torture. You have in the slide some of the missions of the 2 last special rapporteurs on torture, of Professor Manfred Novak, who was the special rapporteur until 2010, and of the present special rapporteur, Professor Joan Mendes from Argentina, that is a professor of law in the American University in Washington. I had the privilege of participating in the majority of these missions, and the role of a forensic doctor in this kind of missions is the one that you can see in the slides. To assess possible lesions and signs of abuse, even in the absence of specific complaints, to document these signs of abuse, to interpret the evidence and deduce possible causes, and of course to provide an opinion as to the extent in which the medical evidence correlates with the allegations that are presented by both parts. But as I told you, in many countries, the conditions of detentions are really appalling. And so, as a physician and as a forensic doctor, you also have to document the conditions of detention because sometimes they can put the health of the detainees in danger, the mental health, the physical health, and they can be a cruel, inhuman, and degraded treatment or punishment, or they can even amount to torture, as I will show you with some slides. And of course, there are other obligations for the forensic expert to disclose torture practices, to bring to knowledge the physical and the psychological consequences of torture, as we are doing here today. And I will say, quoting my good friend Hernan Reis, that there is also a very specific role for the forensic doctor involved in these missions, because possible in many of these fact-finding missions, the only immediate direct benefit for the victim is whatever the doctor can provide. Will I be able to walk again? Will I be able to become pregnant again and have a child? Will my hands work one day again? And this is the direct benefit that the victims feel from these fact-finding missions.